Hello, and welcome to another coffee break with Kardec. Our quarter of an hour break to have some coffee, tea, hot chocolate, and cold drink. And meanwhile, we can discuss some aspects from the book Genesis according to the Spiritism. And the topic for today is the superiority of Jesus' nature. We've talked about the nature of the physical body that Jesus took up on a previous coffee break, just showing that there is a natural process of incarnating, taking up a physical body through conceptions, through the union of the cells forming an egg, and then the development of that egg into the womb, and then 9 months later you have a human being formed. And Jesus, according to Kardec, he wouldn't go against that. He just used the natural means to come to the physical world because he wanted to show us how to live properly in the physical world. So we've discussed that. But the topic of today is the superiority of Jesus' spiritual nature. We know that Jesus, just like all of us, Jesus has got a perispirit, and Jesus, due to his high spiritual level, he could, of course, he had a compatible perispirit and also the manipulation of the fluids. They're also in accordance to his level. We can see that Jesus had a physical body, but he didn't live a physical life. He had a spiritual life. He was in such a high degree of spiritual development that he could be in the spiritual world while attached to a physical body. And despite this, he could use all the faculties that we all have. But due to our nature at the moment, we are spirits from the third category. The first is the category of the highest spirits, the ones who have reached the highest degrees of perfection. Whereas we are still at the beginning, in the kindergarten of spiritual life. So because of that, we all have all the faculties to be developed. When we show some of these psychic faculties, or when we show some signs of mediumship or spiritual faculties, they are at a very, very low degree. We see some people, for instance, they are writing mediums or seeing mediums or hearing mediums, or they do materialization, or if they write, they may have automatic writing, semi-automatic writing. So we have these categories very well explained in the medium's book, but they're just categories for us to understand the manifestation of the psychic phenomena. Where is the borderline between one and the other? There isn't a borderline. The fact is that our faculties, they are still to be developed. When we show some signs, they are very initial, premature signs. And as we evolve as spirits and we get to higher levels, these faculties start to unfold, and they will be present in us, in our spiritual life, even when in a physical body. And that's exactly what happened to Jesus. Jesus was so pure. He is of such a high spiritual level that, as I said before, despite being in a physical body, he could also perceive the spiritual world and live in the spiritual world. We see many times this happening. There is one example, and that it was considered a miracle. And miracles we will see, they are just basically the psychic phenomena. Now that we understand how the fluids work, how malleable, how our thoughts and our willpower can transform and manipulate these fluids to give them properties, to give them certain characteristics. And also our perispirit, which is this basically a fluidic body that is enveloping our spirit. And this fluidic body actually is in accordance to our level of development as spirits. And having said that, we know, for instance, when Jesus he had that, the Peter and the others, they were fishing and they were very complaining, they were very unhappy that day they couldn't catch a single fish. Then Jesus, he went into the boat and said, well, go back into the sea and let's go to that place and throw your nets on this side. And when they did that, they had all that fish coming. And why was that? Was that a miracle? Jesus created all those fish for them to catch? No, it was because Jesus, using his spiritual faculties, and that was natural in him because he was already at that degree of development. He could see exactly where the fish was. So all the natural laws, the ones that we know and we understand, which are just a small part of the natural laws in the universe, we know very little about them. But Jesus knew them all, and he was very comfortable with those laws. They were already part of him in his spiritual life. That's why he cured so many people. And we see that this is very natural because now we understand how the fluids work, the relation between the fluidic body, the perispirit, and the physical body. We know that fluids we can get cure for diseases, for problems that we have, even in the physical body, at the physical level, due to the manipulation of fluids, the properties of fluids that we receive. We can do that, but sometimes when we lack the necessary elements to do that, to manipulate ourselves, the fluids, to cure ourselves, we can get help from an external source. And when this external source was Jesus, then the fluids that we got were of the purest level possible. And we know also that the willpower is very important. It's not just the property of the fluid, but it's also the power that this fluid comes, the concentration of these fluids. And Jesus could do that very easily because that was his nature. And then he performed so many cures. But it's interesting that he wasn't interested in curing the physical body per se. He always gave, through his love, he wanted to help people. He wanted to cure them. That was his intention. That's why he was so efficient in curing people, even with the high level that he had. Also, his love he had for those people. And then after giving them a lesson, talking to them, he always talked to them. He always, together with the physical cure, he tried to change their spirits, to give a spiritual contribution to people. So that this physical or fluidic cure wouldn't just remain there, something that it would happen at that place, and then later that person would actually get the same disease again because the cause was there, still hadn't changed. No, we see that Jesus usually he brings his beautiful, wonderful teachings to people, and the reason for that is that he was first trying to cure the spirits, and then he also had a word, go and sin no more, showing that your problem, your physical problem, is the result of your spiritual nature, of your spiritual level. And what Jesus said, you can do more than that. You can change. And showing love, he actually taught, not just said you have to love your neighbor. No, he taught how to love neighbor and your fellow humans. And we see this effects because Jesus didn't want to show off. He didn't do that just for the sake of doing. He had a much higher purpose for that. And this much higher purpose was actually to cure the souls, to cure those people, showing them through his example what love meant. He was at a very high level. Jesus didn't need, in principle, to come here to this world and do what he did, but he came on a mission. And because he was a spirit that was at such a high level, he could perform not just all these transformations on a physical level, but also on a spiritual level, and most importantly, on a moral level. We know nowadays, because some people say, well, the Bible, for instance, is full of these type of phenomena. We even see not just Jesus performed cures. We saw that Paul, when he fell from the horse on the way to Damascus, he got blind. Then he went into Damascus, and then the voice said to him, "Go to Damascus and wait." And then Jesus sent someone, Ananias, to go there and actually remove the blindness from Paul. And so he wasn't Jesus, but still using the same faculty, of course, at a lower degree, at a lower level compared to Jesus. But he, Ananias, was also capable of performing the same process of cure. And we've seen that from Genesis, from previous talks. We understand this process when looking at the fluids. But then what I want to call the attention to is that some people may claim and say, well, we can trust the Bible. We don't know if exactly in that place, in that way. So, there are so many doubts regarding that. But the thing is that we can check that nowadays. We have people actually reproducing them and getting identical results of these psychic phenomena. And of course, this is there for us to see. And we realize that they obey a law. And now with Spiritism, with the information that we get, especially from book Genesis, how to manipulate fluids, how to change the property, how this fluid is related to the physical body. And the perispirit, which is fluidic, but also matter, is actually connected, as Kardec says, molecule by molecule to the physical body. So there is this interaction between them. So we can explain that. And we see that, yes, these psychic phenomena that we see nowadays, that are reproducible, that we can repeat them and get the same results, they obey these laws. The laws that we see according to the properties of the perispirit, properties that we know very little, although we know already a great deal. We can say that is very little compared to all the capabilities of the perispirit when it is fully unfolded. And I would say that to material level as well. We know very little of our material world. We think that we know a lot, but we know very little. So we know little about our physical world, and even less from the spiritual world, although we have all this information available. So when we get to understand more, then we see the beauty that it represents. We see how powerful we are in terms of spiritual nature, and also what we can do even on a material level. So we see that all these miracles that called miracles, they were nothing but the manifestation of the spirit life during incarnation. As I said before, all these that looked very supernatural regarding Jesus's life, they were nothing but Jesus showing a manifestation of the spiritual life, and he was fully aware of the spiritual life, showing it on the physical level, in the physical world, while incarnated in the physical body. And this is also a force of nature. The spirit is a force of nature. We think of the natural forces, the laws, the forces that we find within physics, for instance. But the spirit is also a force of nature that works on a different level, not at the lower level that we see in gross matter, when we talk about the four forces that are known in physics. And then we see this spiritual life and material life interacting with each other all the time. And through these were called miracles, we see how they can interact, how we can change certain aspects of the material life using the spiritual properties that we all have with our perispirit. And we know that, Jesus and his virtues, and he came here, and it was interesting because when John the Baptist, he sent one of his disciples to talk to Jesus. And so this disciple, he went there and asked Jesus if he was actually, who he said he was, and he said, yes, I am the Christ. And he didn't limit himself to say that, just yes, I am, because anyone could say that. An imposter could say that. But what he said, his answer actually wasn't just saying, yes, I am. The way he asked the disciple to tell John the Baptist was, go tell John that the blind see, that the infirm are healed, that the deaf hear, and that the gospel is being proclaimed to the poor. So what did Jesus was asking the disciple to say to John is that, I'll tell you the fruits, and then you yourself will come to conclusion regarding the tree, because we know, good fruits come from good trees. So Jesus showed through the manifestation at the highest level we can conceive. He showed the manifestation of someone who lives a spiritual life, even in the physical world. And this is an example for us, not that we perform the miracles that Jesus did because he was a very high degree. And I even mentioned this before. He had this aura, the fluids that were enveloping him were of such a pure level that even those who touched them, they got cured in some cases. Why is that? Because they were getting the purest water from the purest water spring that was actually Jesus, and all the fluidic environments that he had around them. It's so beautiful. It's never. I usually say that when we talk about Jesus and how evolved he is, how pure he is, we never manage to find the words to describe properly. We never manage to get the thoughts together to describe properly what it was. But to me, was like a spring of fresh and pure water that can actually bring relief to all of us. So that's what I had for today. And I hope you've enjoyed your hot or cold drink, and see you in another coffee break with Kardec.